They tried to take my... At 5:42 the next afternoon, I was still inside. That bothered me more than the message did. The old relay station was 18 minutes away by the fastest route, 26 by the route I would actually use, and considerably longer if I did what I normally did before meeting someone who knew too much about me. I should have been moving already. Instead, I was staring at a camera. Not the camera the stranger had waved at. A different one. They had found one eye in the trees. That did not mean they had found the face behind it. People make that mistake with surveillance. They see a camera and assume the camera is the security system. It isn't. A camera is a question. Who walks here? Who stops? Who looks up? Who knows where to look? Yesterday, the stranger had answered all four. I replayed the footage once more. Human-sized heat signature. Slow approach. No obvious attempt to hide from the camera. A wave. A sign. I know you're there. Then the second message. Marcus isn't your problem. They knew my name. They knew about Shelter 2. They knew enough to find one camera near my perimeter. What they had not done was approach an entrance. That mattered. If someone knows where you live and wants what you have, they don't usually stand in the woods holding cardboard. They watch. They wait. Or they come through the door. No one had come through mine. I checked the entrance sensors again. Nothing. I checked the ground-level pressure strips. Nothing. I checked two things I had never shown anyone. Nothing. Whoever had come here knew enough to frighten me. Not enough to make me panic. There is a difference. At 5:47, I made the decision. I wasn't going to the relay station. Not yet. I sent no reply. If they knew as much as they wanted me to believe, they would know I had received the coordinates. If they didn't, I had no reason to help them. I opened the feed from Shelter 2. Marcus was sitting at the table. Tanya stood beside him. Both of the cameras I had allowed them to discover were covered. One with a towel, the other with what looked like the cardboard from a cereal box. I stared at the screen. Then I put on headphones. Marcus's voice came through perfectly. Now we can talk. I smiled. Cameras and microphones are often packaged together because it's convenient. Convenience is the enemy of redundancy. The microphones in Shelter 2 had nothing to do with the cameras. Marcus had found my eyes. He hadn't found my ears. Tanya lowered her voice. He knew about the tracker. Obviously. Then why let us follow it? Because he wanted us to. There was a pause. I pictured Marcus leaning back in the folding chair, replaying the farmhouse in his head. Tanya said, "So where did he go?" "I don't know." That admission seemed difficult for him. Maybe there's another vehicle. Maybe. Maybe he lives near there. No. How do you know? Because he wanted us to find the truck. Marcus tapped something against the table. Probably a pen. When someone wants you looking in one direction, you look everywhere else. I stopped smiling. That was a good answer. Tanya said, "You think he's watching the roads?" "I think Daniel has been planning this for longer than any of us realized." Caleb's voice came from farther away. "You say that like it's a crime." Neither answered him. He continued, "You put a tracker on his truck." "We were trying to find supplies." "No, you were trying to find him. We need supplies." "Then tomorrow we go get supplies." Marcus sighed. "You really believe his 17-day story?" "I believe there's food in the room. You know what I mean." Caleb did not answer. Marcus continued, "He has more. Somewhere." Mr. Harris spoke next. "So?" That single word stopped the conversation. Marcus said, "So?" "Yes, so. He has enough to help us. He is helping us." "With 17 days of food?" Mr. Harris laughed quietly. "Son, 9 days ago you were sitting on a pharmacy roof." Silence. "He gave you 17 more days than you had." I liked Mr. Harris. Marcus did not. This isn't about gratitude. It never is once people get comfortable. I saved that recording, not because I needed evidence, because some sentences deserve to survive the apocalypse. Elena entered the room. "Where's Sophia?" "Bathroom," Caleb said. Elena lowered her voice. "I need to talk to all of you." The room changed. Even through audio, I could hear it. "What happened?" Tanya asked. "I found someone." Marcus immediately said, "Where?" "Not here." "Outside?" "Obviously outside." "Who?" "A boy, maybe 16. He was near the drainage road." Caleb asked, "Bitten?" "I didn't get close enough." Marcus said, "We should bring him in." Elena answered before anyone else. "No." That surprised me. It surprised Marcus, too. "You left a kid outside?" "I left someone I don't know outside." "What happened to community?" Elena's voice hardened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Use words like community whenever you want something." I leaned closer to the speaker. Elena continued. "He wasn't asking for help." "What was he doing?" "Watching the workshop." Nobody spoke. "Did he see you?" Caleb asked. "I don't think so." Marcus said, "Where exactly?" Elena hesitated. "Good." Then she said, "Near the drainage road." "Not exact." "Better." Tanya asked, "Was he armed?" "I couldn't tell." Marcus stood. I heard the chair move. "We need to check." "No," Elena said. "Someone is watching us." "And going outside to announce we noticed him helps how?" Marcus didn't answer. Sophia returned. "Why are the cameras covered?" Nobody answered her either. She said, "That's not suspicious at all." I nearly laughed. Then my perimeter alarm sounded. Not Shelter 2, mine. I removed the headphones, one sensor, west side, then another, southwest, then 3 more almost simultaneously. I opened thermal. Heat signatures moved through the trees. 5, 7, 11. Not people. The first infected hit the outer fence 30 seconds later. Then another. Then 6 more appeared behind them. The relay station meeting was no longer my biggest problem. I had seen groups of infected before. This was different. Not a horde. Not yet. A small swarm, maybe 25 to 30, moving through the wooded corridor west of the property. They weren't coming for me. That was the good news. The bad news was that infected didn't need a reason to ruin your plans. Something had pushed them east. Noise, movement, maybe people, maybe nothing. They hit the outer boundary unevenly, some wandering along it, others slamming against obstacles because the shortest path happened to be through them. I killed the exterior lights, not because they attracted the infected, because light attracted people. The cameras switched to infrared. I watched. At 5:58, another thermal signature appeared beyond the swarm. Human. It moved quickly north, then disappeared. The Watcher. Maybe. I couldn't know. But someone was out there, and the infected had just forced them to move. I checked the time. The relay meeting was in 2 minutes. Interesting. If the person at my perimeter was the same person who had sent the coordinates, they had a choice. Make the meeting, or keep watching me. The infected had made the choice harder. I waited. This is the part people misunderstand about preparation. They think preparation means having an answer ready. Sometimes preparation means being able to do nothing. No panic, no unnecessary movement. No opening doors because something outside changed. I had air, water, food, power, time. The infected did not. So I watched. 6 minutes passed. 1 wandered away. 2 followed. A cluster remained against the western barrier. Another group drifted south. The human heat signature did not return. I opened the entrance status. Clear. I could leave. Not through any of the routes I considered too valuable to expose. Not through any emergency path. The ordinary way. The dangerous way, if someone was watching. But nobody could watch while 28 infected were forcing them away from the area. Opportunity isn't always something you create. Sometimes the dead create it for you. I changed clothes, dark shirt, work pants, boots, small pack, water, radio, medical kit. Then I opened a secured cabinet. Inside were several things I had not needed during the first 9 days. I looked at them, then closed the cabinet again. Not yet. I took one item from a smaller compartment and placed it where it could be reached quickly. Planning had kept me alive longer than firepower ever had. I intended to keep it that way. At 6:13, the southern camera showed the last cluster moving away from my normal departure route. I waited another 4 minutes. Then I left. No dramatic escape. No secret tunnel. No hidden door opening a mile away. I simply used the route I normally used when I believed no one was watching. The difference was that this time I knew someone wanted to. I moved quickly through the trees, stayed low where the ground dipped, crossed a dry channel and reached a concealed vehicle I had parked well away from the property days earlier. At 6:31, I was moving. If the watcher returned, they would see a quiet perimeter. No Daniel, no open entrance, no explanation. Let them wonder. Wonder is useful. I reached the relay station at 7:08, an hour and 8 minutes late. That was intentional by the time I arrived. The station sat on high ground overlooking 3 valleys. Years ago, it had carried microwave links and emergency communications. Now the fence leaned in 2 places and vines covered half the equipment shelter. I parked nowhere near it. The final approach was on foot. I watched for 10 minutes. Nothing. Another 10. Nothing. At 7:31, I saw movement. A woman stepped from behind the old generator building. Mid-40s, maybe. Gray jacket, small backpack, empty hands where I could see them. She didn't look toward me. She looked toward the road, waiting for someone. Me, presumably. I stayed where I was. At 7:36, she checked her watch. At 7:41, she sat on a concrete block. At 7:48, she stood. Then she spoke. "You can come out, Daniel." I did not. She waited. "Or don't." Still nothing. She placed something on the concrete block, a handheld radio, then stepped back. The radio crackled. My own radio, tuned to the frequency from the previous night, came alive. "You were supposed to be here at 6. I pressed transmit. "You're still here." She looked around. "Good. Why?" "Because if you were stupid, this conversation wouldn't be useful." "Who are you?" "Someone who knows what happens next." "That answer works better in movies." She smiled. "I expected you to say something like that." "Then you know me better than I know you." "That's the problem." I watched her hands. No sudden movement, no visible partner. That meant nothing. "How did you get my name?" "Same way I found the camera." "Which is?" "Work." "Whose?" She paused. "People who are mostly dead now." Not an answer. I said, "You have 30 seconds to give me a reason to continue." She laughed once. "You're not leaving." 25. "Because Marcus isn't your problem." 20. "Because the people who visited your second shelter weren't scavengers." That stopped me. She continued. "They were looking for infrastructure." 15. "They weren't looking for canned beans, Daniel." 10. "They were looking for places with independent power." "Why?" The woman looked directly toward the hillside where I was hidden. Not at me. Close enough to be uncomfortable. "Because someone is rebuilding a network." I said nothing. She continued. "Radio sites, fuel depots, solar installations, water systems, secure buildings, anything that can operate without the grid." "Who?" "That's why I asked you here." "That's not an answer." "No." She picked up the radio from the concrete block. "It's an invitation." I stood and stepped into view. Her eyes found me immediately. She did not look surprised. "Daniel." "Name?" "Mara." "Last name?" "Not yet." I almost left. Then she said, "You missed the interesting part." I stopped. What? Your bunker isn't what led me to you. That sentence bothered me. I turned. What did? Your decoy. I stared at her. She raised a hand. Relax. I don't know what's under your real property. I didn't react. She smiled slightly. Good. Don't confirm things. I hated her already. Mara continued. Your workshop went quiet when everything else went dark. Then it came back. Clean power, controlled transmissions. Someone was maintaining it. Lots of people have generators. Lots of people don't rotate radio frequencies. I said nothing. She nodded. Exactly. You've been monitoring Shelter 2. Not continuously. How long? Long enough to know the loud one isn't your biggest concern. Marcus. So that is his name. I had given her information. Small. Still information. I filed the mistake away. What do you want? Mara looked toward the valley. To know whether you're the kind of man who understands that the zombies aren't the only system changing. That's a sentence, not an answer. I need access to communications. No. I didn't ask for your bunker. No. I didn't ask yet. Still no. She laughed. Fine. Then her expression changed. Someone is coming. I heard nothing. She had. A second later, an engine echoed below. We both moved. No discussion, no vote, no trust. Just two people who understood that standing in the open during an apocalypse was stupid. We disappeared on opposite sides of the station. The vehicle was a pickup. Dark, no headlights, 3 people inside, maybe 4. It stopped below the relay station. 2 men got out. Both carried long guns. Both had a strip of white cloth tied around the left arm. I watched through binoculars. Mara was somewhere on the other side. I could no longer see her. One man walked directly to the equipment shelter. The other checked the generator building. They knew the site, or they knew what sites like this looked like. The first man opened an electrical cabinet. He wasn't scavenging randomly. He was inspecting. Mara's words returned. Independent power, communications, infrastructure. The man removed a radio. Site's dead, he said. The second answered, check batteries. I could hear them because they weren't trying to be quiet. That suggested confidence, or stupidity. The second man found the concrete block where Mara had been sitting. He stopped. Fresh disturbance. He crouched, then looked around. I lowered myself behind the ridge. Someone's been here. The first man immediately stopped working. No argument, no questions. They moved together, trained enough. A third person remained in the truck. I couldn't see their face. The men spread out. One came toward my side. I moved backward, slowly. The relay station had multiple approaches, which was why I had disliked the meeting location. It also had multiple exits, which was why Mara had chosen it. The man came closer. 30 yards, 25. I had options. None I wanted to use. Then something crashed through the brush below. The man spun. An infected stumbled onto the access road. Then another. Then 3. The pickup driver started the engine. The man nearest me raised his weapon. The first shot cracked across the valley. Every bird in the trees lifted at once. I closed my eyes for half a second. Idiot. The infected dropped. The sound rolled outward. Then came the answer. Distant screams. Multiple. The small swarm near my property hadn't been alone. The men heard it too. Move. They ran for the truck. More infected appeared along the road. The pickup reversed. One struck the tailgate, another grabbed the side. The truck accelerated, throwing it away. Within seconds they were gone. The infected followed the noise. I stayed still. A voice whispered behind me. Now you understand. I turned. Mara was 6 feet away. I had not heard her approach. That annoyed me more than the armed men. You make a habit of sneaking up on people? Only paranoid ones. That's a good way to get hurt. Then you should improve your perimeter awareness. I stared at her. She smiled. I definitely hated her. White cloth, I said. Her smile disappeared. Yes. Who are they? I don't know what they call themselves, but you know what they're doing. They're collecting useful things. People? Sometimes. Why? Same reason people collect generators. That answer sat badly. Mara looked toward the road. We should move before the infected circle back. We, she sighed. There it is. What? Your favorite word. I started walking in the opposite direction. She followed. You're not coming with me. I know. Then stop following. I'm going to my vehicle. Where? Not your business. I stopped. She stopped. We looked at each other. Then, despite myself, I laughed. Fair. For the first time, Mara smiled like a normal person. Then the scream came from behind us. Close. Too close. An infected burst from the brush. Mara moved first. I moved faster. What happened took less than 3 seconds. The infected hit the ground. Mara stared at me, then at what I was holding. So, you do carry one? I put it away. Sometimes. You could have mentioned that. You didn't ask. She looked at the body, then at me. Suppressed. I said nothing. Daniel. What? That was almost funny. Keep walking. While I was meeting Mara, Shelter 2 was making its first supply run without me. I learned that later, not from the cameras. They were still covered. From the microphones. Caleb, Elena, and Marcus left together. That combination would not have been my choice, which was probably why Marcus chose it. They took the smaller vehicle. Mr. Harris stayed with Tanya, Grace, and Sophia. Before leaving, Marcus gave instructions. If we're not back in 3 hours, lock down. Mr. Harris said, Door's already locked. You know what I mean. I usually do. Sophia asked, Can you bring chocolate? Elena said, We'll see. Marcus said, We're looking for essentials. Sophia replied, Chocolate is essential. I saved that too. They went to a rural convenience store 6 miles away. The store had already been hit. Front windows broken, shelves stripped. But people are bad at searching. They take what they recognize. Water, canned food, chips, batteries. They ignore things that don't look immediately useful. Caleb found cooking oil in a back storeroom. Elena found powdered drink mix, salt, and several sealed bags of rice behind fallen shelving. Marcus found cigarettes. He took them. Caleb asked why. Trade. Good answer. Then they heard movement upstairs. The store had a small apartment above it. Elena wanted to leave. Marcus wanted to check. Caleb said nothing. They went upstairs. Inside were 2 infected. 1 adult, 1 child. That stopped them. Not physically, emotionally. People can prepare themselves to fight monsters. It becomes harder when the monster is wearing dinosaur pajamas. The adult attacked first. Caleb used a length of pipe. Marcus froze. Elena didn't. The adult went down. The child came next. Nobody moved. It was Marcus who finally did it. Afterward, he sat on the stairs. For several minutes, nobody spoke. That mattered. I had been treating Marcus as a type. Ambitious, controlling, manipulative. All true, but types are convenient. People aren't. The man who wanted my bunker sat on a dirty staircase shaking because he had just killed something that looked like an 8-year-old boy. Human nature wasn't one thing. That was the problem. On the way back, they found the boy Elena had seen watching the workshop. He stood in the middle of the road. This time, he wanted to be seen. Marcus stopped the vehicle. Elena said, Don't. The boy raised both hands. No weapon. Caleb said, He's alone. That doesn't mean anything, Elena replied. Marcus opened his door. Elena grabbed his arm. What are you doing? Talking. Daniel said, Daniel isn't here. There it was again. Marcus stepped out. The boy remained 20 yards away. "What's your name?" Marcus called. "Jonah." "Why were you watching us?" Jonah looked at the vehicle, then at Marcus. "Because I saw the other men." "What men?" "The ones with white on their arms." Marcus stopped. Even without seeing the recording, I knew exactly what his face would have done. "Where?" "They came yesterday." "To the workshop?" Jonah nodded. Elena stepped out now. "What did they want?" "I don't know." "How many?" "3. The same group, or part of it." Marcus asked, "Where are your people?" Jonah looked away. "Dead." That answer works because it is usually true. Elena asked, "How long have you been alone?" 3 days. Marcus looked toward her. She shook her head. He looked at Caleb. Caleb said, "Not my bunker." "Interesting." Marcus looked back at Jonah, then made a decision. "Get in." Elena said, "Marcus, we're not leaving him. You don't know him. Neither did Daniel when he picked us up. There are arguments that are wrong because the logic is bad. That wasn't one. Marcus was right. That did not make the decision safe." Jonah got into the vehicle, and Shelter 2 gained its 8th resident, without my permission. I didn't go back to my bunker after leaving Mara. That would have been predictable. I went to a small observation point I had used twice before the outbreak. From there, I could monitor a road leading toward my property without being anywhere near the property itself. Mara disappeared in another direction. She had given me a radio frequency. I had not promised to use it. At 10:18 p.m., a dark pickup passed along the road. White cloth on the mirror. Not the same vehicle from the relay station. I watched it continue. It did not turn toward my property. That was good. It also meant Mara had not been lying about everything. That was less good. People are easier to dismiss when they're completely wrong. I waited until after midnight before moving. When I finally returned, I approached carefully. The infected were gone. The perimeter was quiet. The camera the stranger had waved at was still intact. I stopped beneath it, looked up, then looked toward the trees where the stranger had stood. No sign. I entered. Everything inside was exactly as I had left it. I checked the logs. No access attempts, no tampering, no pressure events near the entrance, no evidence anyone had even found it. That confirmed something important. They knew an area. They knew a camera. They knew I was somewhere nearby. They did not know how to get inside. Not yet. I slept for 4 hours. At 5:11 a.m., I woke to an alert from Shelter 2. Not perimeter. Internal. Someone had opened the communications cabinet. I sat up. The cameras were still covered. I put on headphones. Marcus whispered, "Try it again." Jonah answered, "It's not working." I froze. Jonah. I'd never heard that voice before. Marcus said, "You said you knew radios." I said my dad did. "Then what are you doing?" "Looking." I opened the access log. The cabinet lock had not been forced. Someone had used a key. There were only 2 keys. Mine, and the emergency key. The emergency key had been inside a sealed envelope in a drawer. I checked the camera recording from before they covered it. Tanya had watched me open that drawer 2 days earlier. Of course she had. I listened. Jonah moved something. Static filled the audio. Then a voice came through the shelter radio. Faint. "Station 4. Report." Marcus went silent. The transmission repeated. "Station 4. Report status." Jonah whispered, "That's them." Marcus asked, "Who?" "The White Arms." I was fully awake now. The voice continued. Team 7 missed check-in. Relay site compromised. Mara's meeting. The men. The gunshots. The infected. Jonah said, "They'll come back." Marcus asked, "Here?" "I don't know." "Why were they at the workshop?" Jonah didn't answer. Marcus repeated the question. Finally, the boy said, "They weren't looking for the workshop." What were they looking for? Jonah's next words changed the morning. They were following me. I left immediately. Not because I wanted to confront Marcus, not because there was an unauthorized person inside Shelter 2, because I needed to know whether Jonah had been followed. The boy could be telling the truth. He could be lying. He could also be telling the truth and still be dangerous. People treat those possibilities as mutually exclusive. They aren't. I approached Shelter 2 from a distance. No vehicles, no movement. I checked 3 observation points. Nothing. Then I activated one of the exterior cameras. The towel inside came off one camera almost immediately. Sophia's face appeared. She looked directly into it. "Hi, Daniel." I stared at the monitor. She continued. "I know you're watching because the little light came on." I made a note to disable the light. Sophia leaned closer. "Marcus brought home a boy." Then she looked over her shoulder. "And Mom is mad." She disappeared. 30 seconds later, Elena entered the camera view. "Daniel?" I activated the terminal. "Who is Jonah?" Elena read it. "We don't know." "Where did you find him?" "Road near the old store." "Was he followed?" "We don't know." Marcus entered. "He warned us about the men." I typed, "That does not answer the question." Marcus read it. "He was alone." "You don't know that." "He needed help." I stared at those words, then typed, "Keep him inside. Nobody leaves." Marcus laughed. "Now you want him inside?" I did not respond. Elena understood. "If someone was following him, you don't want them seeing us push him out." "Correct." She turned toward Marcus. "Cover the camera again." Marcus looked surprised. "Why?" "Because if Daniel wants us locked down, maybe we should stop advertising which camera we're talking to." Also correct. The feed went dark. Audio remained. I switched to exterior surveillance. Then I saw it. A flash. Far beyond the workshop. Sunlight on glass. Once. Then gone. Optics. Someone was watching. I didn't know who. White Arm Group. Mara. Someone else. Didn't matter. Shelter 2 was compromised as a location. Not necessarily as a shelter. That distinction mattered. The workshop was supposed to be discoverable eventually. That was why I had built it. But discovery changed its purpose. It was no longer just a refuge. It was bait. The question was whether I was willing to use it that way with 8 people inside. I hated the answer. No. Whatever Marcus thought of me, I had brought most of those people there. They were my responsibility to the extent I had voluntarily accepted responsibility. That did not mean they owned me. It did mean I couldn't pretend their deaths were irrelevant. I opened the radio channel Mara had given me. For several seconds I said nothing. Then, "Mara." Static. No answer. "Mara." A voice returned. "You called." "Do you know a boy named Jonah?" Silence. Then, "Where is he?" That was not the response I wanted. "Answer the question." "Daniel, where is Jonah?" "Why?" Mara swore. First time I'd heard her lose control. "Do not let him transmit." Too late. "What is he?" "He's a kid." That's not what I asked. "He's a kid whose father worked for them." "The White Arm Group." "Yes." "What did his father do?" Mara paused. "Communications." I looked toward Shelter 2. "Of course. Why are they following the boy?" "Because his father took something." "What?" "I don't know." "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe. If Jonah has what I think he has, they won't stop looking." "What do you think he has?" Mara's answer came quietly. "A list." "Of what?" "Sites." "What sites?" "Everything they haven't found yet." My stomach tightened. Power, water, fuel, communications, shelters, private facilities. I looked toward the distant workshop. How would his father know about my shelter? He wouldn't. I stopped. Mara continued. Unless someone else added it. Someone else. Marcus wasn't my problem. Maybe Jonah wasn't either. I asked, who maintains the list? I don't know. Who has access? I don't know. You don't know much. I know enough to stay alive. So do I. Then move those people. No. Daniel. No. If I evacuated Shelter 2 while someone watched it, I would create a trail of 8 people. Maybe 9 if I joined them. Trails lead places. Places lead to other places. I wasn't moving anyone until I knew who was watching and why. Mara said, "What are you going to do?" I looked at the workshop. Nothing. She went silent. Then she understood. You're going to wait. Yes. For them to come? Yes. That's dangerous. Then don't come. I ended the transmission. For the next 6 hours, Shelter 2 did nothing. That was harder than it sounds. People become restless when told danger may be outside. Marcus wanted to scout. I refused. Tanya wanted explanations. I gave none. Elena wanted to know whether Jonah should be restrained. I said no. Caleb wanted to know whether I was nearby. I ignored the question. Sophia wanted to know whether she could have the chocolate they had found. I said yes. Some decisions are easy. At noon, I sent instructions through the terminal. No one exits. No lights in workshop after dark. No radio transmissions. Keep normal noise inside shelter. Do not touch cameras. Marcus read the last line twice, then looked directly at the covered lens. I waited. He removed the cereal box. One camera returned. The second remained covered. Fine. I didn't need both. The hidden microphones continued to work. Jonah sat on a bunk. Thin. Tired. Scared. Not acting scared. Actually scared. There is a difference. Marcus questioned him for almost an hour. Jonah's father had worked maintaining communication systems before the outbreak. After things collapsed, he had joined a group that initially claimed to be restoring emergency services. They organized fuel, radios, transport, security. Then the mission changed. Or maybe the mission had always been something else. Sites that refused cooperation lost equipment. People with useful skills were told where they would work. Independent groups were absorbed. Jonah's father decided to leave. He didn't make it. Jonah did. "What's on the list?" Marcus asked. "I don't have a list." "Then why are they following you?" "My dad gave me something." "What?" Jonah looked toward the camera. "Smart," Marcus noticed. "Daniel can't help you if you don't tell us." Jonah said, "Maybe I'm not telling you." I liked him slightly more. Marcus did not. "What did he give you?" "A memory card." The room went quiet. "Where is it?" Jonah said nothing. Marcus leaned forward. "Listen to me. If people with guns are following you because of that card, everyone here is in danger. Then let me leave." "No." Elena stepped in. "You just told Daniel we couldn't throw him out." "That was before we knew." Jonah laughed nervously. "You people are weird." Sophia, from across the room, said, "You have no idea." I saved that recording too. At 3:17 p.m., the exterior sensor triggered. One vehicle, then another, approaching slowly. No headlights. White cloth. I counted 6 people, maybe 7. They stopped beyond the workshop. Nobody exited immediately. They watched. Good. So did I. 5 minutes. 10. Then a man stepped from the first vehicle. No rifle visible. He walked toward the workshop alone. At the door, he knocked. Inside, everyone froze. The man called out, "We're looking for a boy." No response. "His name is Jonah." Marcus looked toward the camera. I sent one message. Silence. The man outside continued. "He stole something that doesn't belong to him." Jonah whispered, "It was my dad's." Marcus raised a finger to his lips. The man knocked again. "We don't want your supplies." That was probably a lie. We don't want your shelter. Almost certainly a lie. We only want the boy. Nobody moved. Then the man said something interesting. Daniel, if you're listening, this doesn't concern you. Every face inside changed. So did mine. They knew my name. Again. Different people. Same information. I zoomed the exterior camera. White cloth, calm posture, no visible fear. The man looked directly at the workshop wall, not at the camera. Give us Jonah and we leave. I opened the terminal. Nobody inside could see what I was thinking. That was useful. Marcus whispered, "We should consider it." Elena stared at him. He's a child. He's carrying something people are willing to kill for. So this shelter has 8 people. 7 before he came. Exactly. Caleb said, "You're doing math with a kid." "I'm doing math with all of us." Jonah stood. "I'll go." Sophia said, "No." Everyone looked at her. She stood between Jonah and the door. Daniel wouldn't give you to them. Marcus said, "You don't know that." Sophia looked toward the camera. Neither did she. That was the problem. Because Marcus was right about something. I was doing the math, too. There are decisions you make because they're morally correct. There are decisions you make because they're strategically correct. The dangerous ones are when those decisions disagree. Giving Jonah to the White Arm Group solved several immediate problems. They leave. Shelter 2 remains intact. The unknown list goes with them. My other preparations remain separated from the situation. 8 people become 7. Simple. Efficient. Wrong. Not because Jonah was a child. That mattered. But there was another reason. The moment I surrendered someone under my protection because an armed group demanded it, I taught that group something. Pressure works. Come with enough men. Make enough threats. Daniel negotiates. That lesson would cost more than Jonah ever could. I typed into the terminal. Jonah stays. Marcus read it. His face tightened. Outside, the man waited. I sent another message. Do not open the door. Then I switched frequencies. Mara, she answered immediately. They're there. Yes. How many? 6, confirmed. Vehicles? 2. You're going to fight them? No. What are you going to do? Nothing. You keep saying that. Because people keep expecting me to solve their problems for them. Mara went quiet. I continued. They don't know I'm here. Are you? I smiled. Good try. She laughed once, then said, Daniel, those men won't leave. They will. Why? Because they came for Jonah. Exactly. And Jonah isn't coming outside. So they'll force entry. Maybe. That's your plan. No. What is your plan? I looked at the road, then at the wooded slope behind the White Arm vehicles. Movement. One infected. Then another. Not enough. Yet. The gunshot at the relay station had taught me something. These people used firearms readily. Noise was not their friend. I had no intention of creating noise myself. I didn't need to. The man outside knocked again. Inside, Marcus whispered, Daniel's going to get us killed. Mr. Harris answered, No. How do you know? I don't. Then why say no? Because if he wanted us dead, he could have left us outside 9 days ago. Marcus looked away. The man at the door finally stepped back. He raised a radio. Spoke. 2 armed people exited the vehicles, then 2 more. They approached the workshop. One carried a pry bar. Another carried a shotgun. Mara said through my earpiece, Daniel, I see them. You need to do something. I am. What? Waiting. The pry bar touched the outer door. An infected screamed from the road. Every White Arm man turned. 1 infected became 4. 4 became 9. Not a swarm, just enough. The man with the shotgun fired. Exactly what I expected. The first blast echoed. Then the second. The infected fell. More screams answered from farther away. The White Arm leader shouted something. His men moved back toward the vehicles. The infected coming through the trees weren't 20. They were closer to 50. The group had brought them. Every gunshot had invited more. Mara whispered, "You knew." "No. You knew they'd come. I knew they'd shoot." The first vehicle started. The second didn't. One of the infected had reached the driver's side. Gunfire erupted. Inside Shelter 2, everyone hit the floor. Marcus shouted, "What is happening?" I sent, "Stay down." The exterior became chaos. Not cinematic chaos. Ugly chaos. People slipping, shots missing, infected hitting doors. A man falling and not getting back up. The White Arm group abandoned the second vehicle. 5 of them piled into the first. The leader was last. Before getting in, he looked toward the workshop, then toward the trees. For 1 second, I thought he had seen me. He hadn't. The vehicle accelerated. The infected followed. Within minutes, the road was empty except for bodies and the abandoned truck. I waited another 20, then 30. Mara said, "They're gone." "No. They left." "That's not the same thing." She sighed. "Do you ever relax?" "Sometimes." "When?" "Before the apocalypse." I ended the call. I entered Shelter 2 after dark. Not immediately, not dramatically. I waited until I was satisfied nobody remained close enough to observe the workshop. Then I approached, using the route everyone inside already believed I used. No new secrets. The outer door opened. Marcus was waiting. He looked at me, then at the door behind me, then back at me. "You were nearby." "Maybe." "You knew the infected were coming." "No." "You used them." "Yes." He stared. "How?" I waited. "That's not an answer." "It's becoming one of my favorites." Elena came forward. "You could have warned us." "I told you to stay inside. You knew those men would shoot." "I suspected." "And if they hadn't? Then I would have learned something else." Marcus stepped closer. "You gambled with us." I looked at him. "Yes." Nobody spoke. I wasn't going to lie to make them comfortable. Marcus shook his head. "You admit it." "Of course." "You could have fought them." 6 armed people? You have weapons?" That came from Mara's observation earlier, not Marcus's knowledge. I looked at him. "Why do you think that?" "Because nobody prepares all this and doesn't." Reasonable. I didn't answer. Marcus continued. "You could have helped." "I did." "By hiding?" "By not turning 6 armed men outside this bunker into 6 armed men shooting at me." He had no response. I walked past him. Jonah sat at the table. He looked smaller in person. "Memory card." His face changed. Marcus said, "Daniel." I held up a hand. Jonah reached inside his shoe. "Smart." He removed a tiny card wrapped in plastic. He placed it on the table. I didn't touch it. "Your father gave you this?" "Yes." "Did he tell you what's on it?" "He said names and places." "Did he tell you to give it to someone?" Jonah hesitated. "Yes." "Who?" "A woman." Marcus looked at me. I already knew. "What woman?" Jonah swallowed. "Mara Vale." So I finally had a last name. I said nothing. Jonah continued. "My dad said if anything happened, find Mara." "Did he tell you where?" "Relay station." "Of course." Marcus looked between us. "You know her." "I met her." "When?" "Yesterday." "You've been meeting people while telling us not to leave?" "Yes." His mouth opened, then closed. I turned back to Jonah. "Why didn't you go to the relay station?" "I did." That stopped me. "When?" 2 days ago." "Was she there?" "No." "Who was?" Jonah looked down. "The men." "White Arms." "They were waiting." He nodded. "My dad's radio had the frequency. They heard us." "Us. Your father was alive then?" Jonah nodded again. Where is he now? The boy didn't answer. He didn't need to. I looked at the memory card. Mara wanted it. The White Arm Group wanted it. Jonah's father had died protecting it. And it contained places. Possibly mine. Possibly others. Marcus said quietly, We should see what's on it. No. He stared at me. No. Not here. Why? Because I don't plug unknown storage into equipment I need. Caleb nodded immediately. Finally, someone who understood basic operational security. Marcus said, Then where? I have equipment elsewhere. His eyes changed. There it was. Elsewhere. Another breadcrumb. I regretted the sentence before it finished leaving my mouth. Marcus smiled slightly. Not because he had won, because he had learned. I picked up the card. Jonah stays here tonight. Marcus folded his arms. And tomorrow? Tomorrow depends on what this contains. Elena asked, Where are you going? I looked at her. Outside. Sophia laughed from her bunk. Still not an answer. I looked at her. Correct. For the first time all day, I smiled. I did not take the memory card home. That would have been stupid. I took it to an isolated workstation in a location that had nothing to do with either shelter. No network connection. No stored credentials. Nothing I cared about losing. The card contained 4 folders: power, water, comms, secure. Inside were spreadsheets, maps, photographs, and notes. Hundreds of entries. Some crossed out. Some marked active. Some marked acquired. Others marked pending. This was not a scavenger's notebook. It was an inventory. I opened comms. Relay stations, radio towers, satellite terminals, private microwave links, emergency repeaters. Some I recognized. Several had White Arm notes attached, fuel secured, staff cooperative, staff replaced. I didn't like that wording. I opened secure. Warehouses, private compounds, government shelters, underground facilities. Some entries were vague, others disturbingly specific. Then I found Shelter 2. Not by name, a photograph. The old workshop. Date stamped 3 weeks before the outbreak. I stared at it. 3 weeks? Before. The photograph showed the road, the workshop, my old pickup. I zoomed. Someone had been watching Shelter 2 before anyone started biting anyone. The notes were short. Private hardened site. Independent power suspected. Owner unknown. Monitor. My skin went cold. This wasn't an apocalypse list, at least not originally. Someone had been cataloging infrastructure before the outbreak. I searched for my name. Nothing. Daniel did not appear. I searched the property associated with my real bunker. Nothing. I searched nearby roads. Nothing obvious. Good. Then I found another photograph. Not my bunker. My house. The ordinary house where my sister used to drink coffee with me. Date stamped 6 months earlier. No notes. Just a file name. D.CAIN_RES_01. I stared at it for a long time. They had known my name before the outbreak. The stranger at the camera had not discovered me in 9 days. Someone had been interested in me for months. I opened the final folder. It was encrypted. The file name was simple. Phase 2. I tried nothing. No guessing. No clever tricks. If Jonah's father had protected the card, he may have protected that folder too. I copied nothing. Photographed the screen with a separate camera. Then removed the card. My radio crackled. Mara! I hadn't told her the frequency was open. Daniel. I didn't answer. Daniel, if you have the card, don't open Phase 2. I stared at the radio. Interesting timing. I pressed transmit. Why? A long pause. Then Mara said, Because I think that's what got Jonah's father killed. What's in it? I don't know. You're developing a pattern. Daniel. What? Where are you? I looked around the empty room. Not your business. Under different circumstances, she might have laughed. She didn't. Someone just activated one of the old network repeaters. So, it was dead yesterday. Which one? North Sector. I knew it. 20 miles from Shelter 2, closer to my sister's last known route. My stomach tightened. Mara continued. They're bringing pieces of the network back online. Why? I don't know. Then find out. That's what I'm trying to do. Try harder. I ended the call. Then I looked at the memory card again. Phase 2. I had no intention of opening it. Not yet. Because another rule of survival is knowing when information itself is dangerous. And I had enough dangerous information. For one night. I returned to my property just before dawn. The camera the stranger had found was still there. Something beneath it was different. A small envelope had been tied to the tree. No one had crossed the entrance sensors. No one had approached the actual access point. They had come to the camera. Exactly the camera. I watched the recording before touching anything. At 3:12 a.m., the same figure appeared. Face obscured, no obvious weapon. They walked directly to the tree, tied the envelope, looked into the lens, then left. No attempt to search, no attempt to follow cables, no attempt to find a door. That confirmed my suspicion. They knew where One Eye was, not where the body was. I waited another hour before retrieving the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Mara, taken at the relay station. Yesterday. She was sitting on the concrete block waiting for me. On the back, someone had written, "She is not who she says she is." Below that, "Ask her about Phase 2. I read it twice, then a third time. No signature, no threat, no demand, just information. I looked toward the trees. "You're getting annoying." Nobody answered. I went inside. Not because I felt safe, because safety isn't a feeling. It's a set of conditions. And for the moment, my conditions remained intact. No one had found the entrance. No one had breached the perimeter. No one knew the shape of what was underground. No one knew how far it extended. No one knew what I had built into it. And nobody knew the places from which I could disappear if I ever had to. Those facts were worth more than concrete. I intended to keep them. I placed Mara's photograph beside the memory card. 2 mysteries. 1 woman. 1 encrypted folder. And somewhere between them, a group of armed men rebuilding pieces of a dead communications network. My radio chirped. Shelter 2. Caleb. "Daniel," I answered. "What?" "You need to hear this." Behind his voice I heard shouting. Then Marcus. Then Elena. Then Jonah. "What happened?" Caleb took a breath. "The boy says there's another shelter on the list." "So? He knows who is there." My hand tightened around the radio. "Who?" Caleb hesitated, then said, "Your sister." For several seconds, I heard nothing. Not the ventilation. Not the radio. Not my own breathing. My sister had been moving south the last time we spoke. Her husband. Her children. Safe for now. That had been her final message. I had spent 9 days telling myself no news was not necessarily bad news. Now there was news. I looked at the map, then at the photograph, then at the memory card. For the first time since the outbreak began, I didn't calculate. I moved, and that was probably exactly what someone wanted.